Hi guys, it's Tara and welcome to the final day of my Handmade Halloween series for 2015. I am going to be using an amazing stamp set from Essentials by Ellen today, and I'm going to apologize for this getting up a little bit late, you guys. I have been moving my craft room, so I'm super excited about that, but it delayed my video a day or two. So anyway, this is that adorable stamp set. This is called Got Candy, and it comes in this amazing, really sturdy plastic case straight from Ellen Hudson LLC, so you don't even have to worry about getting a case for it. So I was super excited. It's my first Essentials by Ellen stamp set, and I can tell you what, I will definitely be getting some more. So I'm going to start with this little ghost, and I'm inking him up with some Memento Tuxedo Black ink and stamping him on some Nina 110-pound Solar White cardstock. I'm not going to use that little shadow underneath him, so I wasn't really super careful about inking it up. I'm going to be cutting him out, so I didn't really care that it stamped a little bit either. So I stamped him, and now I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut him, kind of. And the reason I'm doing it kind of is because I am attempting to make my very first little interactive kind of pop-up card today. So I will kind of walk you through my trial and error with that, because I can tell you I've never done one before. I've watched a couple tutorials, but really I'm just kind of doing my own thing here and trying to logic through in my brain what needs to happen to make this work. And some things I get right and some things I don't. So I went ahead and shared it with you guys, even though it doesn't end up being perfect, just because I figure for me it's helpful to see some trial and error, so maybe that will be helpful for you guys. So you can see I left at the bottom of him a long paper tab, and I am going to use that as part of the pop-up mechanism for my card. So now that he's fussy cut, I lined the edges with my black soot marker like I like to do, and you can see that he fits perfectly behind that large pumpkin in the stamp set. So that's going to help with the pop-up. So this is a rectangle cut with my Lawn Fawn Stitch square dies from some Nina cardstock, and I already marked with a pencil kind of a line where I want the bottom of my card to be. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the smaller pumpkin, well, I guess it's not really smaller, it's squattier, the squattier pumpkin with my Memento, and then I'm going to stamp it on a Post-it note, and I'm going to do some really simple masking so that I can stamp that taller pumpkin kind of back behind. Now, I don't really need the stem and such, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it right off there, because really it's just kind of that side that I need to be masked. So a sticky note worked great for this because I didn't need the whole thing to be masked. I'm not going to distress ink over it or anything, so I'm saving my masking paper for a different project. And now I'm inking up that taller pumpkin, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp it kind of off to the side and what's going to end up being behind that little pumpkin there. And now I'm going to do some fancy partial fussy cutting that's really not fancy at all. And essentially I'm just going to line up my little panel with one of the lines on my grid mat, and then I'm going to take my ruler and line it up where I want it to be, also with a line on the grid mat so that I know it's straight, and just take my craft knife and cut right along the ruler until I get to the edge of the pumpkins. And I'll just do that on either side of the pumpkin, and that's going to cut that edge out for me. And then I'm going to go in and take my scissors, and I'm going to fussy cut out the top of the pumpkins, and that's going to create the bottom border of my card. And these are simple, awesome images to do this trick with because there's not a whole lot of fussy cutting. So I'm going to cut that stem off of that pumpkin, and that's going to be part of my interactive element later also. So while I'm cutting this out, I'm going to take a moment and apologize to you guys for the ridiculous state of my fingernails. I have been meaning to repaint them, but I got all caught up in craft room moving madness, and I kind of let a couple things slide. So I'm sorry, I don't usually have the really chipped, wonky nails, but anyway. So now I'm going to line the top of those pumpkins with my black soot marker so everything looks nice and cut out perfectly. And now I'm just going to go ahead and do some really basic Copic coloring. I sped this up way fast because I'm not doing anything special here. I'm just coming in with a bunch of different orange shades, and I'm shading the areas that would have the shadows on these pumpkins. I have no idea where my light source is at. I just want my pumpkins to kind of look round, which is why I'm leaving that white space in the middle. That's going to create the highlight in the middle of the pumpkin and give the illusion that they are rounded and kind of coming out at you. And then just to provide the deepest, darkest shadows, I did come in with a brown marker and put some some of that brown right over the orange where the deepest, darkest shadows would be in order to just really make that pop, because I didn't have a really super dark orange color. So then I'm just going to reverse my colors and blend everything back out, and then when I come back in with my lightest color and go over that white area, it leaves a really nice bright highlight right there in the middle of the pumpkin, and you can see that they look nice and rounded. And then I'm just going to come in with a couple of colors really quickly, and I'm going to color the little stems. And so I just have a couple of kind of olive green tones, and then I'm going to also go in and shade with that darkest brown. Now, this is kind of a lot of effort for that little teeny tiny space, but I thought the pumpkins turned out pretty cool, so I wanted to make sure that the stems matched. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put a tiny bit of shadowing on my ghost, and I'm using my cool grays to do this. And I am just using the C1 and the C3 and then coming in with my colorless blender and blending that all out, just so he doesn't look super flat and one-dimensional against those really cool rounded pumpkins. Now I'm going to go ahead and ground the pumpkins, and I'm using my warm grays for these shadows. I'm just using a couple different tones to put just a little bit of shadowing underneath the pumpkins so they don't look like they're floating out in space there. And my very darkest one I just put right underneath them, nice and light, and then again blend it out with my colorless blender. And then I am going to come back in with my darkest tone here and add a little bit of dot work. This is something that I've gotten from Julia Alterman's channel. She is a big fan of dots. She usually does it with a gel pen, but I thought it kind of made the ground look a little bit textured, so I liked that little look there. So now I'm cutting out that little tiny stem, and I am going to line the sides with my black soot marker again, just to make sure I've got consistency. There's a beautiful close-up of my gorgeous chip nails, just so that you all feel better about your chip nails. And now I'm going to glue that little teeny tiny stem on top of this ghost head. So I am going to use some multimedia matte for that, and I'm just going to put the tiniest little dot right on top of his head and then squish that little stem on there and hold it in place for a couple seconds just so that glue can take. So here's lesson number 1 on the interactive pop-up card. Use a bigger pull tab. So not only did I use a teeny tiny pull tab, but my original intent was to stamp this on top of the ghost and fussy cut it all out as one image, and I forgot to do that. So instead I had to glue it on the top, and so not only is it teeny tiny, but it's not actually part of the ghost, so it can come off. So use a bigger pull tab. So you can see there what look I'm going for the ghost to pop up out of the pumpkin. And I thought he was going to be able to pop all the way up, but I didn't really plan the spatialness of my card correctly, so he only ends up being able to pop up part of the way, which I think still ends up being cute, but that's tip number 2. Like, think through the actual physics of your pop-up card, I guess. It was never my strong suit, so, you know, hey, I'm going to cut myself some slack. So I trimmed off the rest of that tail there, and now I'm going to start assembling this pop-up mechanism. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of foam tape on the very bottom of that pull tab. And I'm going to leave the backing on one side. And then on the side that's exposed with the stickum, I just took a little piece of that Post-it that I used as my pumpkin mask, and I stuck it on the back just so that there's no stickiness on that pull tab spot there. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and take a second piece of foam tape, and you can see there's like pauses. This is me like reasoning through like, okay, what is the next step here? So now I'm going to go ahead and put another piece on there and do the same concept where I cover the back. So the purpose of these two pieces is to regulate how far up and how far down my little ghosty can pop in and out of the card. So the one on the bottom is going to ultimately catch on something to prevent him from being pulled all the way out. And the one on the top will catch on something to prevent him from sinking all the way down into the bottom where you can't pull on the little stem anymore. So that was my logic there. Now I'm going to start putting all the pieces of foam tape down to be the blockers for these little, for the pieces on the pull tab to bump into to prevent the ghost from going too far up or too far down or too far to the side. So I've essentially got to block him in there, kind of like when you do a shaker card and you don't want your shakers to get anywhere. So see, that piece there is going to regulate how far up and how far down. So you can see here's where I realized, like, okay, he's not going to pop all the way up, but you can still see his little face, so I think it works out fine. And so now I'm just going to kind of start assembling all these pieces. You can clearly see that I've never done one of these before. So some of you out there may have some fabulous tips and some easier ways to do this. If you have some input, by all means, please leave me a comment. I would love a way to maybe do this a little bit more efficiently. I made it work and I muddled through and I really liked the finished product, but some of you are probably interactive card experts and I would love to hear what you have to share as far as making this technique a little bit easier. So I put the foam tape all over because this panel is going to pop up and that's going to leave room for a little ghosty there to pop up and down behind that little pumpkin. So now that I've got that all put together, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my card. I have a Nina A2 card base that is top folding, and then I've got a spare piece of some Simon Says Stamp black cardstock that is cut down to be the same width, but it's not as big as the back because I'm going to put that panel in front. And I'll tell you guys, tip number 3, I realized once I put this on here that because my black piece of background does not go all the way to the bottom of my card base, that little pull tab gets caught on the lip of that black paper. So were I to make this card again, I would make sure that the black panel behind is the entire size of the card front, just so that there's a smoother transition when I'm pulling my little ghost popper up and down. So now I'm peeling the backing off of all the tape except for the stuff that's directly connected to my little pop-up mechanism. You don't want to pull that off, otherwise everything's going to stick there. And then I'm just very carefully placing this on the front so that the little ghost is able to move up and down. So this is kind of where I realized that the edge of that black paper was a problem. And you can still get the ghost up and down, it's just you kind of have to wiggle it a little bit more. So if I were to give this card to someone who didn't know, they probably would think that they were going to break it if they pulled on it and wouldn't really get the full effect. So that's just something I'm going to keep in mind for next time I do this. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish my card up with a sentiment. I'm using the adorable sentiment that says "Got Candy" with a question mark on it in the stamp set, and I am just going to go ahead and emboss that with some white embossing powder and heat set that with my heat tool. I did use my Versamark ink. I'm loving using a coffee filter to catch my embossing powder, by the way. This is a tip I've seen on several different videos and I've never really gotten around to buying any coffee filters, and now that I have, I will never go back. So just a tip for you. So now I heat set that, and so now I'm going to go ahead and add my finishing touches. So here's my bats from my Batty border die. If you guys have watched any of my other Handmade Halloween videos, I have put these bats on every single card, so I'm kind of proud of myself. And then in addition, I'm putting some silver sparkly stars cut out of the Mama Elephant Lots of Stars die. They just make these really cute little confetti stars that add a little something extra to any project. And then I'm going to come in with my Signo Uniball white gel pen, and I'm going to go ahead and add some white stitching to the black portion of this card. Since the bottom panel was cut out with a stitched rectangle die, it has the faux stitching on it, so I wanted to kind of continue that, as well as add a pop of white to the top of the card. And then to finish things up, I'm going to come in with my Wink of Stella, and I had a Wink of Stella glitter explosion here. This one is kind of getting to the end. I need to put some more water in it to activate that glitter, but I squeezed too hard, and you can see there it just like poofed out all the glitter. So these are like uber glittery pumpkins. They are super, super, super sparkly. So now the card is finished, and little ghosty guy sits down in there and he pops out, not so smoothly, but he does. And the card is cute if you just leave him out permanently. So even if the pop-up function doesn't work great, it was still a good try, and I think that the card turned out really cute in spite of my newbie mistakes on this type of card. So here is a shot of the card with the pumpkins all closed, and then a close-up of the little ghost when he's popped out of there. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate you watching. If you like this video, please hit subscribe, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I'd love to chat with you guys. All the supplies are listed at my blog. I'm on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. And then here I've provided links for you guys to all 4 of the other days of my Handmade Halloween series. All right, guys, thanks so much. Bye.